Great. So welcome everyone to today's public speaking workshop. My name is Emma, and today with me is my colleague Laura from the Student Voice team as well. She'll be a good person if you've got any questions to do with elections specifically. So yep, what will we be covering in today's session? So we were going to start by looking at what a good public speaker looks like to us. We will then look at a few top tips for successful public speaking, both in an online and an offline capacity. We will then move on to looking at how we can all navigate fear effectively. And we will finish on an exercise where we can practice short elevator pitches based around your own manifesto points. If you don't know what those are yet, you will find out. Is everyone happy with that? Any questions? No, perfect. Okay, so what does a good public speaker look like? Well, this can be different for different people. What you think a good public speaker looks like might be slightly different to someone else, so this is subjective. But what I would like you to do is have a little discussion as a group and think about specific things that you think a good public speaker looks like. So you might think of a specific person when you're thinking about this, or you might be thinking in more general terms. So what skills do they have? What personality traits does a good public speaker have? Or even thinking about what a good public speaker doesn't do or shouldn't do would be okay. I'm going to turn the recording off for this section so you feel comfortable chatting together, and we'll take about 5 minutes to discuss it. So just let me pause the recording. Okay. So what I really want you to take away from that little discussion is that what we say when we're talking will be understood and remembered by the audience depending on how we say it and how we look and act. So it's not just about the words that are coming out of our mouths, there's so much more to it. And it's really important to think about that in an overarching way. Does that make sense? Great. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll go through some tips and tricks for you, hopefully things that will be useful while you're campaigning, but also hopefully things that you can take forward in other capacities as well. So first really important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is prepare, and then just prepare some more. Make some notes, go over them as many times as you can. Once you're comfortable with the material, just keep practicing. Sometimes it helps if you record yourself and then watch it back so you can pick up on what worked and what didn't. Or alternatively, if you can practice with a friend and then that friend can give you some feedback, that's really helpful. The next really important thing is know who you're speaking to. So think about your audience. The way you might pitch something to a group of first years would probably be completely different to how you'd pitch it to master's students. So just make sure you tailor things depending on your demographic. Next, organize your material. So just like an advert, you don't want to lead with the terms and conditions at the beginning. That would just be silly. So start with the interesting information first, really grab their attention, and just make sure your content is logical. Next thing to think about, we discussed this previously, but just keep your focus on the audience. Watch how they're behaving and acting, watch their reactions, and adjust things as you go along. Just be that little bit flexible. If you just deliver a really canned speech and you're not reacting to what they're doing at all, you'll just lose their attention. So make sure you're being flexible. Try as much as possible to show your personality. Be yourself You'll probably establish a better credibility if your personality shines through, and your audience is much more likely to trust what you're saying and see you as a real person, maybe someone they can relate to. We mentioned this one as well, but don't just read from a script or a slide. Obviously, it's helpful to have a few words in front of you. I often find that if I write the first few words in a sentence, I can just glance at that and it pushes me on into the rest of the sentence without any need to read the whole thing. Different things work for different people, but just remember, don't read word for word. Next thing, watch your body language. So this is one we've also mentioned. Your body language says just as much as the words you're saying. So really watch that. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult when you're on a screen because you're often in front of a desk, more tendency to hunch over, but still try and make that effort to watch what your body language is doing. You still want to try and come across relaxed and confident, even if maybe that's not how you're feeling on the inside. If you can put that on the outside, then people will believe it. Okay, nervousness is so normal. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Use that nervous energy, become energetic or vibrant with it instead of just shaking with nerves. Make sure you utilize it as best you can. And lastly, attitude is key. Be positive and just remember you absolutely can do this. Don't let your mind be clouded by negative thoughts because they will just consume you. If you are just positive from the outset, things will flow and it will all be fine. Is everyone okay with those so far? Yeah, they all make sense? Perfect. What I'm going to do now is talk to you about some tips and tricks specifically online, because we know that things right now are all a bit strange and all your campaigning is obviously going to happen online. So there's certain things that I would recommend thinking about. So firstly, there is nothing more distracting than watching yourself on the screen. I greatly recommend, if you can, just hiding yourself from view. It does depend on the platform you're using, but Zoom lets you do it. I aren't sure about Google, but if it can, do that. It really helps. It stops you worrying about what you're doing or what you look like, and it means that you can keep an eye on your audience and what they're doing instead. Another really difficult thing to deal with is quiet audiences. Just don't be deterred by this. Online, more so, people are often really reluctant to ask questions, unmute themselves, and sometimes even turn their video on. So it's really unlikely it will be a reflection on you if they're being quiet. What I would recommend doing for this is, if people feel more comfortable, you can ask them to contribute via the chat box. Or if you're not getting anything at all, you can always feel free to drop your email address in and say, oh, if you want to talk to me about this after, feel free to drop me a line. That's absolutely fine. But just play it by ear. Every audience is different. Similarly, blank screens. So when everyone's got their cameras turned off and you're just staring at names, it can just feel like you're talking to an empty room. It's really difficult. But what's really important is to remember that there are other people still on the other side of those screens. So don't be deterred by it. Continue with what you're wanting to say, knowing that they are there and they are listening. Don't stop or mumble off or anything like that. Just keep going. It will be fine. And another really annoying thing that we're probably all familiar with is that time lag when people's internets aren't great. So if you experience this, the best thing to do is just leave a couple of seconds after asking a question, wait for a response. Particularly if you've asked people to comment in the chat box, that obviously takes quite a while for people to reply. So yeah, just give it a few extra seconds. Ultimately though, just act as though you're having a face-to-face conversation. I know it's really hard when you're staring at a screen, but the more you try to do that, the more your conversation is going to flow with people. Does anyone have any questions about that? No? Again, if you feel more comfortable, feel free to pop it in the chat and either myself or my colleague will pick it up. Okie doke. Let's move on then. So the next section, we are going to look at how we can manage fear. So fears, anxieties, worries, they're things that most of us experience. We often think that we're alone in this, but we're really not. Some people get more nervous than others, but I can guarantee that most people get on some level nervous about public speaking. So what I want to do with you is a little exercise. We will use Jamboard for this, and I want you all to anonymously try and submit a concern you have about public speaking, some sort of problem or fear. No one will know it's from you. It's completely anonymous. And then what we're going to do is look at those together and try and figure out how we can overcome those different fears or worries that you've got. Does that make sense? Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share a different screen with you. And then copy this link into the chat for you. If you could all click on this link and follow it, I hope that you can see this screen. Let me know if you're having any problems. Can everyone see it? Has everyone got to this page? Just nod or shake your head. No, you're having trouble. Is the link not working at all?
It says we need access to it.
Oh, that's really annoying. No problem. If you just press request access, it should ping through to me and I'll quickly approve it. Sorry about that. Can you try now? I think I've updated the settings. Can you get in now? Awesome. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is have a think about what makes you a bit nervous about public speaking and make a note on here. So this little post-it note down here, click on that and type anything that concerns you in there. So I'll put a little example. So I am nervous that my voice will shake, just as an example. Feel free to pop whatever you like and no one will know who has contributed it. And then once we've got a few on there, we will go through them together and try and think about how we can navigate fear. give you
I
a
think
few
you've given
moments.
us view-only access because it won't let the bar at the side isn't coming up.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's do this differently. I am going to cancel that and go back to my other screen. Okay, you should be able to see my other screen again. Okay, what I would like you to do instead then is private message me something that concerns you or makes you nervous, and then I will see it, but nobody else will, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we will go through them, but I won't let anyone know whose concern is whose. Good, yeah. Okay, so someone has said they're concerned that someone will ask me a question that I won't know the answer to. Makes you look unprepared or unreliable. Yeah, that's a really good one. We'll look at it in a minute. Does anyone else have any? I can see you're all still typing actually. I'm rushing you too much. Yeah, good one. I am nervous that I'll stumble on my words and will accidentally say something that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I worry about that one too sometimes. Anyone else contributing any? Or should we just take a look at those two? Cool. If you want to put any more in, feel free, but let's start by taking a look at those two. So this first one, I'm nervous that someone will ask me a question that I won't know the answer to. Makes you look unprepared or unreliable. Does anyone have any thoughts about how we might deal with something like that?
I think just maybe saying that you don't know, and just owning that first of all, just so you don't make a fool of yourself, and then just putting them in the right direction to where they could find the answer.
Definitely. No, that is exactly what I would say. So if you don't know the answer to a question, be honest about it. People really appreciate honesty, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing the answer to everything. Nobody does. So if you are just honest and either say, I'm really sorry, I'm not sure about that, but I will go and take a look for you and get back to you. Or I'm really sorry, I don't know the answer to that. However, I know that this service might be able to help you. So either take a step back and give yourself time to find the answer, or signpost them to somewhere that does know the answer. That's probably two of the best options you can do. Does anyone have any other suggestions for that I maybe haven't thought of?
No? Sometimes I find it can be quite helpful to sort of acknowledge what they've said, as you said, to signpost them, but perhaps sort of promise to, if you establish some sort of connection where you say, look, can you email me separately about this, or can you follow this up later, and I'll look into it and make sure that I get that done. And that obviously can be perceived quite well by other people, that they think that you're helping out and you're doing far more than you need to, really.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's about building that relationship with people, isn't it? And that really helps. So yeah, okay, hopefully that is helpful. Okay, what was the next fear we had on here? I am nervous that I'll stumble on my words and will accidentally say something that doesn't make sense. I know that this is one that I have worried about in the past, so this is definitely not something that just this person worries about. What I would say is what I said earlier about preparing. You can never over prepare with something like this. The more you plan what you want to say, rehearse it, the more likely it is that it's going to stick in your head. And even if you don't remember exactly those words you used, hopefully you've rehearsed it enough that you can naturally jump from one point to the next. So preparing is definitely key. If you're worried about stumbling, I think that's often to do with if you're speaking too quickly, maybe you're a bit shaky, that kind of thing. So sometimes breathing exercises before you've got a speech might help, or something really silly like power poses. It sounds ridiculous, but it honestly really helps get you in the zone and calm you down. So if you've not heard of them before, you just stand like really strong with your hands on your hips for a few seconds, and it gives you that feeling of confidence that you might need. Does anyone else have any other suggestions that I've not thought of? No, that's cool. Okay, so I think we've gone through those. If anyone has any other fears that they are worried about, but maybe they don't want to talk about in this meeting, that's absolutely fine. What I'll do at the end is I'll pop my email address in, and then if anyone wants to chat privately, I'm happy to do that. Okay, is everyone okay if we move on? Awesome. Okie doke. So the last thing we're going to do for this session then is look at elevator pitches. So if you've not heard of these before, they're basically a really short, snappy speech that you use to get important information across. I think it's a really good idea for you to have one of these ready during voting week, so you know what key ideas you want to get across if anyone asks you. You can flex them up a bit, but you've got that core information there to your disposal. So what we will do is look at what you should think about for your elevator pitch. And what you should think about is trying to keep it short to about 30 seconds. If you do it too much longer, you might lose people's interest. If you do it any shorter, you might not be able to get that key information in that you want to get across. So 30 seconds is like the best sort of time to aim for, really. Then try and ask yourself 4 questions to see what kind of information you want to include in there. So what is the role that you're going for? What do you want to do in that role? Why does it matter? Why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to the wider community? And how can people get involved? Look at those 4 questions and see what you can pull together that comes to about 30 seconds. Sometimes it can also be a good idea to include some kind of highlight of something you've done, or some kind of unique selling point, something that's unique and exciting about you as a candidate. So I am going to stop the recording again, so we can do this without you feeling under the microscope. So thank you, everyone. I hope you found that useful. Thank you for coming today. So we will now move on to questions, and I will stop the recording.